Can you imagine yourself sitting at a police station and having to explain how your entire family was murdered? Traumatized, scared, and nearly escaped death yourself. This creepypasta story will make you think twice when inviting someone to the house you meet online. You never know the story behind a new person. Let's dive into the next story about a teenage girl named Mandy. She nearly escaped death and was relieved to finally arrive at the police station after a horrific experience. However, this story has taken a completely different turn. Welcome to your next Chills Before Sleep. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for us to provide you with more scary stories. Don't forget to enable all notifications to join our weekly cash giveaway pinned in the comments section. I'm Jamie McAllister. I'm a detective working with the NYPD. I was called in to question a teenage girl. Her name was Mandy, and she had been the sole survivor of a mass murder that had left all of her family dead. When I arrived at the station, she was sitting alone in the questioning room. I asked my lieutenant if she had any living relatives left. He replied in the negative. I felt bad for the girl. She looked like she had been through hell. She should be at home right now, with a blanket wrapped around her and a warm beverage in her hand. But instead of that, she was at the police station telling officers of how some psycho killer killed her parents and siblings. I stepped into the questioning room. The shivering child looked up at me. She was a short, skinny kid with blonde hair that was cut roughly at the shoulder level. She looked up at me with sad eyes. I wondered if she knew all of her family was dead. So, young lady, I said as I sat down, can I get you something to drink? She shook her head. I started the tape recorder. Tell me in detail what happened tonight. Don't miss any detail. The girl looked like she was about to cry, but she soldiered on and started. I was just spending my evening talking to strangers online when my mother called me downstairs to set the table. I went downstairs and I was setting up the table with the help of my older brother, when I heard a disturbance outside the dining room window. I thought it must have been just the wind or a raccoon, so I didn't pay any attention. I decided to leave it alone, and I just focused on setting the table. After that was done, my brother and I called my father and informed him that dinner was ready. He was running late, so we decided to wait for him to come home. My mother turned on the television, and we decided to just watch the news while we waited for my father. The news was telling the usual stuff, but it didn't inform us of a killer that was on the loose. My mother commented on how the world had been so much safer when she was a teenager. She was always talking about her youth, and we would always tease her for it. I got a notification on my phone. It was from someone I knew. He told me he was outside my house. I signed for her to pause. Who was this? How did you know him? I asked. She said it was just a friend that she had met online. Do you know his name? I asked. Yes, she said. Jeffrey Woods. I felt a lump forming in my throat. Jeffrey Woods. It had been a while since I heard that name. I had been the man who had investigated the case of his parents' death. I remembered it like it was yesterday. Jeffrey Woods was a shy, introverted boy in his early teens. His brother had been sent to juvenile detention for beating up some boys that were bullying Jeffrey. Those boys had later cornered Jeff at the children's party and had set him on fire. This had led to him being driven insane and gave him his signature look. Round black eyes, pale white skin, and a big, wide grin. He had become a homicidal maniac, and in a fit of rage, he had killed his whole family. I had been the one to investigate his parents' death. We could never catch the boy. It's a stain on my record till this day. The girl coughing was what brought me back to reality. I asked her if she had ever met him in person. but she shook her head. "He's a psychopathic killer. We've tried to catch him, but we haven't been able to," I said, not being able to meet her eye. I had asked her if she had given him her address. She started crying as soon as she said yes. "He was so charming, and he said he liked me," she said between her cries. I didn't know how to calm her down. It was what Jeff did. He was incredibly charming and would win his victims' trust by giving them false sense of security. "Tell me what happened next," I said as I nudged the box of tissues forward. She continued her story. "He texted me and told me he was right outside my house. I was happy because I would finally meet him, but I had no idea how I could go outside at the moment. I told my mother I had to use the restroom and she nodded. I got up from the sofa, and instead of going to the restroom, I went up to my room. I had planned to sneak out through the window. I had done it hundreds of times. It was easy to climb down the window with the help of a cloth-made rope. I was about to climb down when I heard a noise downstairs. It was like glass breaking. I could feel a pit forming in my stomach. I was scared that there was something wrong. This was followed by the sound of screams, both my mother and my brother's. I had to help them. I left the rope on the window and I ran out of my room. I stood over the banister and I saw a horrific scene. My mom was lying on the sofa with a knife buried to the hilt inside her chest. I couldn't help but cry out loud as I saw that. My mom wasn't breathing. Her eyes were glazed over. She was dead. I was absolutely devastated to see that. "Pam, run!" I heard someone shout. It was my brother. I followed the voice with my vision to see my brother struggling with another man. I was horrified to see that it was Jeff. The same Jeff I had met online, except that his face appeared scarred beyond recognition. He had another knife in his hand, and he was trying to stab my brother with it. My brother was trying to fight back with all his might, but Jeff was using a lot of force. My brother looked up at me and screamed, "Pamela, please run! Get help!" And then I had to witness the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. The knife pierced my brother's throat and made it out on the other side. I could hear a gurgling sound coming from his throat, and I stood there as I watched the life leave his body. I pressed my hands against my mouth to stop me from screaming in anguish. Half of my family lay dead in front of my eyes, and I could do nothing. That's when my attention switched to the man in the white hoodie, the one with the pale white skin and no eyelids. "Pam, sweetie," said the hoarse voice. I was scared. The man started running towards me. I screamed as I ran to my room. I could hear him ascend from the steps as he said, "Jeff's gonna get you." I was scared for my life. I really thought I was about to die. I had a decision to make. Either I could hide under my bed or climb down the window and get help. I decided the latter. I took the homemade rope and I climbed down the window. I felt relieved when I reached the lower level, but my feet landed on something soft. It didn't feel like soil or grass. I looked down and I saw it was my father's body. He must have been the first person that Jeff killed. I was completely numb now. I think I was in shock. I couldn't comprehend the fact that all of my family is now dead, and it was my fault. I couldn't afford to stay and think about it. I decided to run towards my neighbor's house and call for help. I was screaming now, trying to get my neighbor's attention. It seemed to be working because I heard some people coming out of their houses to see what was happening. One of them even had a gun. I tried to run to them, but I felt someone tug at my leg, and I fell while I was running. I fell down with my back to the grass. Above me, I saw the stars in the night sky, and in a few seconds, Jeff. He had climbed on top of me, and he had a big knife in one of his hands. His face had to be one of the worst things I've ever seen. He had no eyelids. His face was completely white and pale. His face was completely scarred. There was an artificial big smile etched into his skin, carved out using a knife.
"Hey there, Pamela.
He said, grinning.
Like what you see?
He began laughing maniacally. I began crying and screaming for him to let me go. As he lifted the knife up above his head, he said with a creepy voice,
"You can go to sleep now."
I screamed. I thought I was about to feel the pain of being stabbed. I thought I was going to die, but then I heard a gunshot, and I opened my eyes. There was no one on top of me anymore. My neighbors ran towards me and picked me up from the ground. They put a blanket around me and they gave me something to eat. That's when they called the police, and your colleagues brought me here.
She concluded. She was completely sobbing now. The door of the room opened as I saw my lieutenant standing there. I still had to ask Pamela some follow-up questions, so I told her to stay there. I followed my lieutenant outside of the room. He took me to his office. "There's mail for you," he said. "No one knows who delivered it. It just appeared in my office." I opened up the envelope. There was no return address. Inside the envelope was a letter. It read, "Dear Detective McAllister, another day, another murder, right? I hope you don't blame yourself for it. It's not your fault. I can't be caught. Pam's fam had it coming. I mean, who's dumb enough to actually give their address to strangers online? Yikes. That was a disaster. That was bound to happen. Anyway, I guess I'll see you soon. Remember to kiss the kids goodnight for me. You never know when it might be your last time seeing them." And as for Pam, she had to die. I always finish what I start. Yours lovingly, Jeff the Killer. I was shocked to read this. This letter meant not only was he here in the office, but also he was going to kill Pamela. I rushed out of the office to go back to the questioning room. My lieutenant followed me out as well. The questioning room had its lights off. I knew exactly what I was going to find inside. I turned the light on to see a grisly scene. Pamela's limp body lay in the chair. Her throat slit from ear to ear. She was dead. All around the room there were the words written in her blood. They read, "Go to sleep," over and over again. There was a small note left on the table, written on a piece of tissue paper. I picked it up and I saw the sentence, "Until we meet again."
Thank you for watching this video. Have you experienced a similar situation or another scary experience? Don't hesitate to submit your story by email or in the comments section down below. Ready for your next chills before sleep? Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for us to provide you with more scary stories. Let us know what you think and don't forget to enable all notifications. Be the first ones to get the chills.